Hey folks, Malcolm here. Recently on Twitch, I went over the recent tournament games of a chatter and real life friend of mine, Checkmate, an almost national master strength player. We go over the games together, him giving his thoughts on the positions and me asking questions that I have. I'm a lot lower rated than he is. Let's see it. All right, let's take a look at the next game then. You had white this time.
Yep, I've got white.
Oh, and I gotta
So,
hide all the moves. An E4 player, I like it. I imagine like a French defense. Okay, or
yep,
yeah. Well, yeah. I guess King's Indian is G6, although that's what it appears a perk.
yeah, or a modern. So, we've got a French, and I play this move, knight c to e2. It's not like the most critical line. It's just a simple idea. I want to play c3 and get the rest of my pieces out.
Right, and the idea is that eventually, like once you play C3, you don't have to worry about the pawns anymore. So then you can maneuver your knight over to G3 to get your bishop out. Right.
G3 or f4. In this case, I played the knight to f4,
Fair enough.
and that is because a lot of the time in these structures, black is going to want to play f6
Oh,
to
and then you're
break
on the E6
the
pawn.
structure up. But here, the knight is strongly discouraging any pawn to f6. Looks like it transposed to an advanced French. Well, sort of, except in an advanced French, my knight would be on b1, and I would have to get it out somehow, like this, and it would get in the way.
Is it
But
not
this
just an advanced French when you play E5?
um, the advanced French is if you play e5 in this position.
Okay. Oh, and you played knight C3. Okay, okay, okay. Got it, got it, got it.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So this is a line of the classical French. Um, so b5, and I played a3 because I just want to sort of limit black's attack over here, and if black does get b4 in, I want to open a file so that this rook is never a target.
Gotcha.
So my opponent played queen a5, which I considered a little inaccuracy.
The
So
threat is by pinning the C pawn. If you do nothing, then they can take twice on D4, and you can't take back. No, because your queen's defending. What are they
yeah,
trying to
but
do?
if they take here and I take back, then this e pawn is loose.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Right. So what would you do here?
Bishop D2 seems to it solves the problem of the pin. So then, if they take, you can take back with the pawn, and you're on their queen. Um,
True.
yeah. Other things that solve that problem are playing like D takes C5, which is almost never right because they're going to take back with the bishop.
So
You,
d takes a5. Actually, if they were going to take back with anything, it would be right because we have this b4 move.
you're right.
Unfortunately, they can just
Snatch your
take on
pawn and then
e5 instead.
right. Got it. Um, yeah. And so in this position, I don't know. Can you play B4 directly?
We can. It's like, oh, okay, we can't really because there's this pin.
Well, that's rude. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let me. I'm throwing out moves without thinking all the way through. I mean, again, bishop D2 seems fine. You could also play queen D2, though that seems underwhelming. Trying to figure out whether or not there's any. I know every once in a while in one of these positions you can play like knight takes D5 or knight takes E6.
So I'll ask you, if we didn't have to worry about this queen, where would this bishop belong?
Um, it depends. So E3 is like a fine square for it. And I guess that means when pawn takes, you can play bishop takes, and then that pawn is no longer loose. Another attractive square for the bishop is G5 in order to induce F6.
So I would say that the bishop is sort of in the middle of nowhere on G5. Like even if we could magically put it there, it isn't really attacking anything, and also it's just liable to getting hit with H6 G5.
Right. Okay, so then I guess I'll stick with my first answer, which is E3.
Right. So I thought so too. So I thought if I play bishop D2, they're gonna play queen B6, and then the move I should play is just bishop E3.
Hmm.
But if I just play bishop E3 here, now their queen is looking a little bit silly. They actually want it to be on B6.
Right. Okay, and that's why it's an inaccuracy. It's basically a wasted tempo.
Exactly. And the only problem is, what if black does the thing that they were threatening?
Well, can't you just play
And
bishop takes? Bishop takes, knight takes, and then that pawn is still loose, right?
yeah, I mean, knight takes
Queen
is
takes.
queen takes, but
Yeah.
then bishop c5, queen moves somewhere, and now this position's looking pretty good for black.
Okay.
But instead of that, I just played b4,
Hmm.
and now I play bishop takes, which is an interesting move. I could just take back with the pawn, but by taking back with the bishop, I don't allow them to play a5. So if I take back with the pawn a5, the problem is how am I defending my b4 pawn?
Right.
And if I take,
Rook takes, and they've got two attackers, right?
yeah, so I take back with the bishop, take with the queen, and he wisely doesn't trade, because if I trade with him here, that's just bringing his knight to the ideal square. So
Right. It
he just
wants to
waits
live
for
on C4 or A4.
uh-huh. And now I'm waiting for him to trade, and we're just sitting there with our queens staring at each other.
Right, and we don't mind that. So if he trades queens with you, then like if he plays queen takes D4, then you're going to take back with the pawn, correct? And you don't care that he
Yeah,
has the open file.
I have to, because
Yeah, you're losing
there's
a pawn. Yeah,
I'm
you
losing the
but
pawn
two
in
pawns.
one of two ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, here if he trades, then we just get this position, and now a5 is no longer a thing because this pawn is loose.
Right.
So here I played knight d3. My idea is I would like to play knight d2 to b3, and then play knight d3 and put a knight on c5.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of things to do, but it all starts with knight d2 to b3. But the problem is if I play knight to d2, these pawns are just loose. There's queen c7 hitting both pawns.
Right.
So in order to prepare that, knight d3 guards this pawn an extra time.
Right, and then if queen plays to C7, you can just play rook FC1.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
And another benefit of this is I am preparing this move a4. So this pawn being on c3 is actually really nice, defending my b4 pawn, keeping this bishop out of the game. So the whole reason why I was able to give up my dark squared bishop like this is because b4 pawn and the e5 pawn are keeping his bishop out of the game. And now, after knight d3 and a4, I'm still able to put pressure on his queen side while keeping his bishop still out of the game. So he moves his queen away, and now after takes, we just defend the c pawn, and the c pawn is really solid. It's not gonna like fall anytime soon, even though it is backwards.
Yeah,
But this b5 pawn is actually going to prove to be a weakness.
if we go back to ply, in this position, I guess he can't. So like when you play a takes b5, he can't play queen takes c3 because queen takes rook takes, and then you're taking on a6.
Yeah, this would not be pleasant.
Okay, fair enough. Just making sure I see.
Yep. So knight b6.
He's aiming for
And
the c4 square.
yeah. And now this is sort of an interesting position to try to find candidate moves. What do you think we should be doing here?
So the first thing that I see is that like, I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff going on here. One thing is that it would be nice if my knight that's on f3 could be on d4.
Yes.
Um,
That would be nice.
So if you move your queen anywhere, probably e3 or f4. Although nothing's attacking that pawn, so you could even move to like g4 if there was any reason to. Then like you could play, I guess, yeah, and because the queen's first, your c3 pawn is sufficiently defended. So yeah, candidate moves are queen e3, queen f4, queen g4.
Right. And do we see any particular benefit to any of those in particular?
Um, So the nice thing about being on g4 is that you're directly opposite the king. So if you had a dark square bishop, you could put it on h6, but you don't have a dark square bishop.
That's
Um,
great. We don't have a dark square bishop.
yeah. Um, if we go to e3, we're keeping an eye on that knight.
So let's consider what Black's plan is.
Uh, okay. So black wants to put their knight on. Oh, so if we go to e3, like that's dumb because they're gonna put their knight on c4, and you're just gonna have to move your queen again. So f4 keeps an eye on the places where the knight could be jumping in following that. Although those two squares are already defended by the. Although once you move the knight on f3, then fine. So perhaps f4 is marginally better.
So that is not Black's most, I guess, most challenging plan, at least according to my calculation. I haven't run most of these with the computer yet.
That's okay. So I guess is the other problem that if you move your queen somewhere, then they can play d4. I mean, that doesn't really actually threaten anything, but it does. Like you can't move your knight now because you're getting mated.
No, I would say that Black's biggest plan is to pile up on the c3 pawn.
Okay, fair enough.
So what is Black gonna do to pile up on the c3 pawn?
Um, can't play bishop takes b4. Probably gonna play rook c7 and rook fc8. Other things they can do to pile up on that c3 pawn are to play knight a4. It's hard for the bishop to get any more involved than it already is.
Yeah, let's just suppose we give Black one move for free. Knight a4, and then are they threatening to take on c3?
Let's see. Knight takes, queen takes, queen takes, or knight takes, rook takes. Then the queen has to move somewhere. So probably not.
They actually are threatening to take on c3 if we just gave them knight a4 for free. for
Oh, because
free.
when you play rook takes, they play queen takes, and then when you take the queen, they take the rook. That's right.
Yes. So if we move our queen away, we're actually removing even more protection for the c3 pawn.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to notice that after we move our queen somewhere, they're gonna play, or they want to play, knight a4.
Mm-hmm.
And what we need to do is meet that knight a4 move with um, something that refutes their knight a4.
Well, we want to play like knight d4. So then I guess what they move their queen to c4 and keep the same threats.
They
But
could move
then
c4, although,
the
yeah,
discoveries from the knight, right? Which I guess means we shouldn't play queen f4 because you'd like to
uh,
move that knight to somewhere that protects the bishop, so you can attack the queen on that position.
so let's just consider um, queen f4 because that was the first thing you thought of.
Mm-hmm.
Knight a4 here. I think this move is not going to be good because the queen just gets trapped.
Okay, fair.
So queen probably goes to d7, protecting this b5 pawn.
Mm-hmm. And now we're fine. We can just play rook a3, right?
Rook a3, and now rook c7, piling up more pressure on here.
Queen d2.
Is this really what we want, though?
I mean, no, but it doesn't. At least it doesn't completely tactically fail, which is always my first check.
Right. So I would say that there's a better way to refute this knight a4, which is so let's look at this queen f4 move, knight a4, knight d4, queen d7, and now we can just take here,
Okay.
and we move the knight. But oh wait, the bishop is hanging. Wouldn't it be nice if the bishop was not hanging so we could have this discovery?
Aha. So then you want to put your queen on g4.
Exactly. So we play queen g4.
This is proof that I'm
Now,
too dumb for chess.
and now a4 just totally fails. Knight c5, and we're picking up this knight.
Right. Which you just dropped a knight, but that's fine. And so then you've won a pawn, and you have the B and C pawns against the D pawn.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So queen g4, he doesn't fall for it. He plays knight c4, which I think is nearly a game-losing mistake.
Really? What do you want to play? Knight f4 and then take his knight? Give yourself an outside passer?
Um, as what? As black or what?
No, no, no. So he plays knight c4, and then you play knight
Knight f4, and then what?
sorry. First you play knight d4. He moves his queen, and then you play knight f4, and you want to take with the bishop. Although then I guess the pawn structure is totally symmetrical.
So the reason why this knight on c4 is not good is because it's not actually doing anything. Like there's no target in my position that the knight is putting pressure on.
Yeah, other than the e5 pawn, but that's defended a million times. Well, twice, but close enough.
Yes, it is putting pressure on the e5 pawn, which is sort of not relevant to because it's defended a million times and because all of black's other pieces are on the queen side, putting pressure on the queen side like this.
Right, that makes sense.
So after knight c4, like I'm basically free to do whatever I want because they're not going to put more pressure on my e5 pawn. They're not going to put more pressure on my c3 or b4 pawns.
Okay.
So I just decide I want to play f4, f5, but I
Oh,
don't really
interesting.
have my knight to do it. So I just move my king.
My first instinct was to play rook a2, rook ca1. Like, just take the open file. I guess you can't really take it because they can just play rook a8, and then you just have to trade rooks, and then your queen's not really in a position to exploit that open file. So your plan's better than mine.
Right. And in addition to that, there's no target that I can access with the a file.
Uh, yeah, yeah.
So I just play king h1. My plan is simple: f4, f5. And even if he wants to stop f4, f5, for example, um, say I play here and he plays g6, then I still play f5.
Mm-hmm.
He could play king h8 and then g6. Like that's technically a thing that he could do. But now, now I can even play for g4 and f5. Although I need to watch out for my king. Maybe I play bishop f3 first.
Okay, makes sense.
So king h1, and he plays f5. He clearly
Hmm.
does not want to see f4, f5 come.
Okay.
So do we take on passant or do we just move the queen?
Um.
Or like we could go crazy and sack the knight.
Yeah. I mean, well, I'm a King's Gambit player, so my first instinct is always like, well, is the knight sack working? And the answer is like, no. Um. My first thought is like, well, I guess if we take en passant, then we can play against the e6 pawn, but like it might get pushed. Like it's hard to tell whether or not we're controlling that position or whether or not we're letting our opponent push their center like rolling down the board. If we just move the queen, then how are we getting at our opponent's king? Like that's not entirely clear to me. So it's not. Let me think concretely. Yeah. So if I take en passant and bishop takes f6, then they're lining up like twice against that knight, which is a little bit troublesome. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and then I've got like two isolated pawns, though they have a backward e6 pawn. So that seems fine. Maybe, yeah, maybe I do take en passant.
So let's suppose. So are we taking on e6?
Uh, so I guess if you take on e6 with the queen, it's check. If the king just moves, then you're taking the queen. So I suppose they're forced to trade there.
Sure.
Yeah.
And now,
They've got to move their rook somewhere. Probably to e8 because now you've got now you have to move back to f4. And so in this position you're up a pawn.
yeah.
Okay, it's not the worst thing in the world.
And there's this move.
Okay. There is that move. Man, chess is hard. What happens if you play bishop h5? Or yeah, sure, knight h5 is also fine.
So yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. So in the
Something's gonna
game,
happen to somebody.
I didn't calculate any of this. I just saw rook f6, and the rook is coming here, and then the bishop is coming here,
Hmm.
and then I'm getting e5, d4, e4, all this coming, and more.
Yeah, and your thought was why let that rook that was good be not good? So you just move your queen.
Yes, and also why let this bishop that's been out of the game all game?
Mm-hmm.
Why give this bishop an avenue back into the game?
Right.
So I just move my queen.
Okay.
And now
And I know that it
The
was important that we were on f4 before because there were tactics involved. Oh, because the that was only because the queen was going to be on c4. Okay, never mind.
yes, that was because the queen was going to be on b5 actually.
Right.
But now there's no threat of knight a4 because they put their knight on this very nice looking square c4, but it just removes all of black's pressure down the c file and like potential pressure of going to a4. So now black needs to do something about a little threat that I have.
Um, which is like what knight f4, and then you're double attacking the e6 pawn, and they've got to do awkward stuff to defend it.
Yes, what kind of awkward stuff would you do to defend it?
My first thought was rook c6, but that loses an exchange. Um,
Foreshadowing.
yeah, that I don't know that there is stuff that they can do. I mean, they can take the no, they can't even take the e5 pawn because your queen's defending. Yeah, I don't know what they do in that position.
So they play king h8, which I don't think is actually preventing knight f4 from winning this pawn. So I think a move that should be considered is something like rook c7.
Okay, and how does that save the pawn?
So knight f4, there's bishop c8.
Right. And it is a little hard to keep. It's a little hard to keep piling up there. Fair enough.
You can't add more pressure, so it's just fine.
Right.
But instead, king h8. They clearly wanted to play g5,
Hmm.
but unfortunately,
It's a tempo
my
too
knight
slow.
is getting here, and there's nothing he can do to save the pawn except sack the exchange.
Right.
So, and now what do we do? We've won an exchange. How do we win?
Uh, I mean, you could just like trade all the pieces and stuff. So like bishop takes c4 is the first thing that comes to mind. Like the that
So
knight's not doing a
we're
ton.
letting this bishop into the game that has been out of the game all game,
Yeah, that's true.
but we're gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, go on. You're just up material. Fair enough. You tricked me.
Well, it's not just that we're up material; it's that this knight is now really annoying.
Yeah, because I guess nothing's defending the d2 square, and then he's threatening knight b3.
Right. So now that we're lacking a knight on d4 and lacking our knight on d3, this e5 pawn is now loose,
Mm-hmm.
and if we do something to defend it, now we're just lacking space for our pieces. G5 is coming, f4 maybe coming,
Yeah.
d4.
Yeah, my temptation is to play something like f3 and then like reroute the queen. Like a pawn storm is coming, but we are at material, so if we can like hold on, then great.
Right. So here we just play f3, and since we are up in exchange, our rook is just eventually gonna come like to d4, other rook to d1, and we're gonna play like rook to d7.
Right.
So f3, g5, 92, h5.
Man, they are going for it.
I mean, he just lost an exchange. What do you expect him to do? Just like sit there and wait for me to play rook d1, rook d4, rook d7, or rook d1, rook other rook to d1, and then rook d7.
Yeah, I don't know, lose quietly like a gentleman. I don't like play poorly like I do. I don't really know what to tell you. I just it's funny to see after such like a quiet maneuvering game in a French for him to just go like, all right, it's time to come get you.
Yep.
But that's
Yep.
I mean that's good news from your perspective. He's if he's losing his mind, that means something must have gone right for you.
Yeah, but it's actually kind of scary.
Oh, it's still scary, obviously. It just it's scary, but things have gone right for you.
Yeah. So right now he's threatening to play h4 with tempo, and then h3, and loosen up my king side with this scary looking bishop here,
Right.
which I don't have any bishops anymore to oppose this.
Right. So you probably just preemptively move your queen out of the way, or you could play. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I attack the queen first, and then I preemptively move my queen out of the way.
Fair enough.
So
Your
bishop
opponent wants to
here.
get their bishop to b6, right?
Yep. And now I'm threatening a little fun discovery.
Yeah, so much fun. Fun for one of you. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
So he decides that he forgot that I was threatening the discovery.
Right. And so, like, I guess the is the best move like knight takes f5 there.
Right. So yeah, so I played knight takes f5, and he won the game
Won the game.
because I took, and it's checkmate.
Oh, right. I didn't see the bishop on b6 there. Oof.
Right. So I actually saw that that was what he was planning. So I just moved the queen back to defend f3.
Right. That makes sense.
But yeah, I did think it was kind of cute.
Yeah.
The
Chess's life in chat is impressed. As am I.
So yeah, unfortunately, this bishop b6 move, while it does plan a nasty tactic, it's just leaving the king side too loose, and now he can't keep control of all his pawns.
Right.
So I win this pawn, and now I don't win this pawn, even though it's probably also winning, but I go for the easiest win, which is queen h6 and queen takes e6.
Right. Queen. So then you expect to see queen takes, knight takes, forking the rook and the bishop, and no matter where the rook goes, you can take the bishop. And then you're just up an overwhelming amount of material,
Yeah,
a pawn and an exchange.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Something along those lines.
So
So
what?
that was my second game.
Oh, so your opponent just resigned here.
Yeah, he just resigns here.
All right, that's all we have for this game. Let me know if you guys like that kind of analysis. Is it useful to you? Please comment below. Have a great day. See you next time.